Welcome to UBCP ACTRA's Diversity Roundtable discussion. Today we're focusing on the LGBT community, representation, identity, and many more things. So let's get started. My first question to all of you is, how do you identify as an actor?
Amazing. I'm an amazing actor.
Excellent answer.
Totally. Sorry.
She is.
Yeah, I'll stay in that answer mode. Perennial, ever blooming.
As Nelson, I identify as gay. As an actor, I identify as my character.
That's a good one.
That's such a good answer.
Yeah.
Ditto.
What Nelson said.
I don't even know. I think there are so many different labels out there that I'm even confused myself as to how I should identify. I think as a person, I am more gender fluid, gender non-conforming, if you want to put that label on it. I guess that works. But yeah, I'm still learning as well. As an actor, I'm still learning as well. I think it's, yeah.
GLAAD put out a study that said there's never been more LGBTQ queer representation in television in history. Did you face any kind of barriers or discrimination, or what was it that helped you get started in the industry and be yourself?
Well, I was acting professionally as early as the 80s. And back then, I think the biggest barrier was me, because I was terrified to be open. And so as a result of not wanting to be open, I managed to stay very closeted and play the game of being this, what appeared to be a straight woman, and laughing at the very homophobic jokes that people would make on set, but never, ever wanting to openly come out. So I think I was my biggest barrier. I didn't have the courage to say no.
What were you afraid of?
Not being cast. I'd say that was the number one thing in the terms of the profession. If they found out, I would be ostracized. And I've never said this publicly, and I hope she's okay with this. I watched a movie. I think a lot of actors have their coming out movie. And my movie, when I came out, was a movie called Desert Hearts, written by a Galliano playwright named Jane Rule. And it became this film. And Helen Shaver was one of the actresses in it who had to play a gay woman. So I wrote to her. And I was like in my 20s. And I wrote to her and I said, oh my God, you have no idea how this film has helped me. But I'm terrified because I'm a gay woman, and is that going to stop my career from happening? And she wrote me back the loveliest letter, back in the days when people wrote. And the one line that I remember the most was, she said, cream rises to the top. That's all that matters. Focus on your craft. The rest will follow.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a personal story like
I was going to say kind of the same thing, in that I definitely feel like my biggest barrier was myself, in the kind of fear of what coming out and being open about my sexuality would mean for my career. I grew up in Alberta, in a pretty conservative, very Mormon town, and I do feel like I came out quite late, I think, by today's standards. I was 21, and I feel like in large part a contributing factor to that was representation in the media. What I knew in Lethbridge, which didn't have any gay bars or anything, was what I saw on TV, and it was shows like Queer as Folk and even like Will and Grace, which are shows I appreciated then and still appreciate now, but I didn't see myself on screen. I saw what I was presented, what the gay community was, and in Queer as Folk, it's drugs and it's sex and it's all these things that I was like, I'm none of these, and I don't want to be part of that. So I was just terrified. And then when I did come out, I kind of feel like, I became comfortable enough to come out to my friends and family, and then when I became an actor and I moved to Vancouver, I kind of reverted back to being scared of who I was and really kind of judging who I was. And I do feel like I kind of had to have a second coming out and a second coming to terms with all of that.
And JayR, you moved here from another country.
Yeah, I'm from Australia. So in Australia, it was a lot more difficult, I would say, for me now here in Vancouver, with the shift that's happened with the characters that are represented. I was never seen for anything. And if I was seen for the gay roles, I wasn't gay enough, or I was too gay. So it was always a struggle for me. And I think when I made the decision to come to Vancouver, like everything just sort of happened, and yeah, the floodgates opened, and I was being seen for the roles that I really wanted to play, and there was just more options for me.
So what's happening in the mix in Vancouver, particularly right now, that is offering you opportunities that you didn't see in another English-speaking country that
Yeah, I think
produces a lot of
that,
television
I mean,
stuff?
this is my opinion on the Australian industry, but I think they lack a lot of diversity. I don't know if they're afraid to represent the LGBTQ community.
Really?
Whereas-
I'm surprised to hear that.
Yeah,
Given
it's,
Hannah Gadsby and all of that.
I mean,
You know, we don't know, but
Cream rises to the top.
yeah, they're still pretty behind when it comes to that compared to the North American market. And so, I mean, like I wanted to come out to the States or Vancouver or Canada anyway. So making the move just really solidified that I had to be here and this is where I was meant to be. And yeah, the shift is just, has been amazing that you see so much more now in the media.
And what about you, Nelson? Do you have a coming out acting story?
Yeah, I was a child of the 80s, and I was like a latchkey kid, and there wasn't a lot of representation for me being an Asian person or as a gay person in the media at the time for that I responded with. And I think that actually helped. I think that resistance actually helped me have an artist statement, because when I started out as an Asian actor, I would go to agents and they would say, "Oh, do you know the accent? Can you do kung fu?" I was like, well, no, that's the whole reason why I want to show you the thing that isn't that. You guys have people who do that, and they do that great, but I want to be the other thing. So the lack of representation actually lit a fire under me. Same thing when it comes to different sides of my personality, being queer, going, well, you haven't seen this yet. I think that's sort of the artist's mission statement. You have a painter, they'll paint a painting and sell it, and they're not done. They'll go back and they'll work for a month and say, well, you haven't seen this one yet. And I think that's sort of the artist's itch, that we want to show what hasn't been seen before. So that helped. Oddly enough, when I first got rolling and I got into the Vancouver theater scene, that's the first time I was asked. We were doing some press, and Extra West wanted to do this interview, and the producer asked, "Are you okay with being out? Like this is the moment. Like if you do this, you can't go back in, and that's your career. Your career is going to be defined by being an out actor." And just having had that upbringing of being maybe a child of neglect or being ignored in the media, feeling like an outsider, I knew that I was going to do way more good being out than being in the closet. I knew that as a human being, that was more healthy and more important to be a fully realized human being, so that I could contribute that to my art. For sure.
That so speaks to your motivation as an actor, because I think for the people who are terrified of coming out because it will limit the roles that are available to them, like to go into it and want to be that representation that you didn't get to see on screen, I think says a lot about why you're doing it, right? As opposed to just like the fame or the money or any of these things, like, you know, going into it wanting to play these leading men straight roles. You're doing it for a different reason then.
Well, it's still oddly enough wanting to fit in, but it was like fitting in as the square peg in the round
Right,
hole,
yeah.
and trying to shave out the edgy bits.
And Nelson, the person who said to you, "Are you ready for this?" Was that was it an empathetic perspective that they were coming from? Was it a like, here's what's going to happen? Were they laying out the consequences for you of something like this?
Yeah, I think they were trying to be cautiously nurturing in their own way, but completely, you know, in that fear-based motivation. And it didn't take long. I was like, oh, I could see where this is sort of coming from. But yeah, I never regretted it. In fact, being out has opened more doors for me than not. I found they say find your tribe. I certainly found co-artists and co-creators to work with, and it just really helped expand the groups that I could work with, and the material that I could work with, and to get deeper and deeper into the identity of those characters, so that I can contribute that to other challenges along the way.
Luvia, we haven't heard from you.
Yeah, early days, my first agent, I remember this conversation. Are you going to be an out actor? And I'd never thought, well, I am who I am. So I'm, you know, your gayness goes with you everywhere. Like, But I guess the question was from a compassionate place or a place of trying to protect me. But as I think of it now, I go, well, if I wasn't out, then I would only allow a sliver of myself to be revealed. You know what I mean? Like, to be a fully actualized human being is to be who I am all the time. And so, oh gosh, I just feel like the weight of that, you know, and I feel for actors who weren't able to come out. And so like that, I can only imagine what that must have been like a sliver of you is revealed and everything else is hidden, just in case. And I have to share this story because it came to me as Veena was talking. Early days when I was on Continuum, so I decided to come out. So I was, you know, always talking about my partner, my girlfriend, and this older actor who'd had a part came up to me, put his hands on my cheeks, and his eyes started tearing up. And he said, "Thank you so much for being you. Thank you for just coming out here and not hiding who you are. It means so much." And in that moment, I saw years of a man who wasn't able to bring his fully actualized self, who probably had to hide in the shadows. Yeah. So I'm so grateful to stand on the shoulders of the people that have come before us, you know, have paved the way.
It's so funny because my experience is like, I've always been fully realized and I'm pretty obvious. So going into meetings with agents, it would always be, the conversation was like, so what gay characters do you want to play?
Right.
And I'm like, well, what are there? Like, is there an option? Like, I mean, I was always like the gay best friend, if that ever happened, or like the one line where it was always sassy or like witty one line. So I didn't have the option to play really straight. And I was okay with that. I was okay to be sort of typecast as the token gay best friend. Awesome. But that was so limited. And when I kind of came into myself and sort of started expressing myself truthfully and authentically, I think that's when everything just started happening for me. And also, of course, the shift that's happened, and we see more of these characters and the world's becoming more woke, I guess. But yeah, like I always fully realized, but it was never went for straight roles ever, so.
So I'm so envious.
Oh, really?
I would love to get cast as a gay person. Never, ever, ever do I get cast as gay.
Really?
Yeah, because I guess I don't look gay, or whatever that's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I don't read that on, like, I'll get cast as a doctor 1,000,000 times, and I have been, but if it's a gay doctor, they wouldn't cast me.
Is that your agent not putting you up for things, or
Oh,
you're
no,
just not
that's
being...
nothing to do with the agents.
Right,
That's
just not getting called in.
The industry's perception of what the industry
Yeah, of
thinks
course.
gay should look like. And I don't fit.
And I think
It's
that
interesting.
part of that is the lack of representation in real life. The part of the thrust of coming out, and I say that the resistance helped me be an artist. I mean, I say that in a somewhat wry way, because there's damage caused when people don't represent. And I know the people who came before us and the reasons for staying in the closet. Sometimes it's about the choice between living and dying.
Safe, yeah.
But the lack of representation in real life, when people don't come out of the closet, then people don't have those characters in their own lives. They don't say, "Oh, Pete from the copy machine is gay. I know him," or
Totally.
coloring your community, and thus you get these stereotypes where you go, "Oh, this is the only gay crayon that we can use because that's all people know."
Right.
What you see at a pride parade.
Yeah,
The general
exactly.
public identifies
Yeah.
as like, it's the rainbows.
Yeah.
And you're like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, it
Not
is, but there's many more
Right.
colors.
Yes, and.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting what you said, Veena, and you know, I think most of you have played both LGBTQ and straight characters, but you say you haven't.
No.
So who's how important is it who's telling the story, who's writing the story, who's producing it, what the studio is saying, and have you seen changes on that end where I know you've done your own work in the past in theater as well.
Yeah. Well, I have seen changes. When casting a non-white actor in a role, let's say a mixed marriage kind of situation, the changes I started noticing were that the ethnicity was incidental to the story. It wasn't because you didn't have to write a justification for why this character was non-white. And now I'm seeing that with the gay characters. You don't have to justify why there's a gay character. It's just part of the ethos of the community. So that's where I've seen a change, where the casting is incidental.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
It's a hard question to
Yeah.
answer because it's a question that I think comes up pretty often because I find it easy to, if I'm watching a show on TV that has a queer character, which wonderful, but then played by a straight actor, I get this kind of conflicting like, well, surely there's someone you could have found. But then it opens up all sorts of questions to like, well, what would a queer actor bring to that role that a straight actor couldn't? It's acting, right? And if I can play a straight character, anyone can play a gay character. Right. But then when it comes to trans characters, I'm immediately of the opinion of like, no, you need to get a trans person because a trans person needs to tell that story and inform that character. And so it is loaded. And I don't think there's an easy answer.
I often get put up for trans roles. And I don't identify as trans. My rep know that. And I don't feel comfortable portraying those stories and telling those stories. I think, yes, it should be a trans actor that should be telling those stories. But then again, there's a conversation of, well, the best actor should get the job, which I also agree with too. So it's very, not with I think with trans roles, it should be trans people, but when it comes to playing, when straight people playing gay roles, that's kind of like,
but why
gray area.
Is that, I guess? Like, why is the line drawn? Because I agree, and I don't know why the trans issue specifically, for me, is like a line where I'm like, no, definitely a trans actor should play the
Maybe
role.
it's just the time we're in right now.
Yeah, maybe.
Like maybe 30 years ago, you know, the fact that you were gay was, okay, no, it's a new thing that we're being open about. So maybe it's just trans is the new gay kind of thing, and bad choice of...
No, I know what you mean.
There's a sense of visible or non-visible minority, and certainly the damage caused by people being marginalized and not represented.
Yeah.
We need to see those colors of human beings, the vibrancy represented. Otherwise, if it's people outside of that community coloring this depiction, it can fall into stereotypes.
Well, there are gay actors. One particular friend comes to mind. He's pretty out, but he won't play gay because he doesn't want to get stereotyped. Or maybe it's a personal thing, but so
that's half of Hollywood though as well.
Yeah.
A lot of them are gay and they just won't.
Yeah, don't want to play gay.
What?
Yeah.
This is news. I'll take it. I'll take the weekends. Send the gay roles here. I'll do them all.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the pressure, I mean, we were talking about this outside, and just the idea of sometimes holding an artist accountable for their choices, an actor. You ask an actor to play anything, we're trained, we believe that we're all one person anyways. So we want to see through the eyes of everybody. Give us an accent, I want to put on some makeup, I want to give me some period piece costuming or send me into the future. I want to play everything. But a lot of the pressure for representation, and rightly so, comes from the audience. Wanting to see themselves depicted. Thankfully, with the internet and with the conversations that's being happened online, the producers are now cognizant of it. I remember when it was just the big networks, and Ellen had just come out, and that was the cream rising to the top. And I was like, oh, what do we do about this now?
Yeah.
And TV was much slower to catch on because it's a bit more conservative. They were trying to please the audiences at home, not knowing this two-way conversation. But in the commercial world, which is much more driven by capitalism. Like Volkswagen at the time was like, great, we're gonna have a gay couple in an ad.
Yeah.
Get people talking. And they responded to a need from the audience. And I think that's sort of the delicate balance. An actor, we wanna play everything. Producers will sort of follow what's happening. And right now what's happening with the audiences is very exciting. Them having that conversation, needing representation, needing the people in their lives represented.
Yeah.
And people advocating for each other.
Yeah, and it's still stuck in stereotypes, though. Like there was a call out for an audition for a gay couple. It was a commercial, and I was given the opportunity. So I guess I did have this opportunity to go and read for this commercial, and I thought, you know, I'm not going to go because I know what they're going to cast, and I know it turned out to be right. They cast a gay male couple who looked like the definitive stereotype.
Yeah.
I think I saw that ad.
Okay, so I thought, I'm glad I didn't
buy the
waste my
car?
time.
I think it was. Yeah. I didn't buy the car. No.
So yeah, it was just, we got a long ways to go.
Yeah. But it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, to speak about the writing room and to have the representation. Showrunners, you want to diversify your writing room because they're going to protect you. So let's just talk about it. Van Helsing got a lot of grief for killing one of their characters who was in a lesbian relationship. And I remember talking to one of the writers, and they were like, I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't know kill our gays is a thing. You know, if a queer character comes out and then they die right away. But they didn't have the representation in the writer's room to protect them. I worked on Ghost Wars, and I played a lesbian character, and there was a writer in the room that was like, we will not kill our gays on this show. And they're like, but what if, but it's like everyone's dead. Nope, we're not doing it. And she fought for my character and my wife to not die. And sure enough, we survived, and that's important. But you don't know what you don't know. So unless you diversify your writing room,
Right.
Yeah.
you don't know.
Yeah.
So you're just going to see the same things, the same tropes happening over and over again. And so protect yourself, diversify yourself to protect yourself.
So that's where it starts. It's got to start at a very different level, like in the writing room.
I think so.
And the showrunners have to be comfortable with portraying their characters in that way.
They may or may not be comfortable, but that's privilege. Our white privilege or our privilege is that we might not feel comfortable, but we have to step forward and have those conversations anyway.
Yeah.
Comfort be damned.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what we're doing here today, in some sense, right? We
Yeah.
are all,
Yeah.
everybody here is very publicly sharing your ideas and your thoughts and your experiences, and I think that's so extremely important as we're going through what I believe is a cultural shift, hopefully in writers' rooms and productions, because we are the audience, all of us here, right? So we want to see these changes on screen. So let's talk about intersectionality. I think one of you said it earlier, what does it mean to be represented on screen? You have all commented on something like that. But if you are a queer actor who also is visibly a person of color or Indigenous, does that add even more complexities, or what is that like when you're auditioning or looking at a role on paper? Because I think that's important for us to discuss as well, because these things are all happening in parallel, I think, all the time.
Well, I guess I feel like I tick a lot of boxes. So it's good for the production side of things. They obviously now with hashtag this and hashtag that, diversity on all levels is very positive. But as an actor, you don't walk around in the world thinking of yourself as all of those things. You're just who you are. And you don't kind of walk down the street or into a casting room from any other point of view but your emotional self. Or that's me. I shouldn't speak for everyone. So I don't kind of walk around thinking, oh, I'm this and I'm that, so therefore I'm an added bonus to a flavor.
Have you been reminded of that you are this and that in an audition?
Yes. I know very often why I am there is because I tick some boxes, yes. And I find that slightly offensive, because you wouldn't do that to a group of non-white, straight people. They wouldn't all be there. I'm often lumped in with a group of actors where the only reason we are all auditioning for this role is because of the color of our skin. You would never see that done to a group of white actresses, because the diversity of type of personality of the non-white actresses is so wide that most of us are not right for the role, other than the call out was for someone of non-white skin. They would not have that wide range of diversity of types of personalities for non-white actors.
Yeah, I had an audition in Australia, and it was for an Asian male. And I went in, and before I even started my audition, they said, "You're not Asian enough." And I was like, okay, so what would you like me to do about that? Like, I can't really, and like, oh, just do your audition, that's fine. I'm like,
Nice.
yeah, so that was yeah, because
So helpful.
Yeah,
Thank
like-
you for that note.
Yeah.
I'll work on that.
Just
Yeah,
doing this for
right.
me. Okay, set a timer.
an
Unbelievable.
experience I had that was interesting. But again, like I didn't go in thinking about being Asian or like, am I Asian enough? It wasn't a thought in my mind. The movie was based on a novel and the character was Asian. So that was fine. But yeah, the moment she said that, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But hey.
Yeah, in a funny way, we should have a couple of casting people in this kind
Right?
of discussion,
Yeah,
right? Be interested to hear it from their point of view.
I can definitely relate to what Veena said about being reminded of your labels when you're in a casting session or when you see it in a breakdown. I mean, I was always aware that I'm Asian. I was always aware that I was gay, but sometimes when you see it in a breakdown, then you see the room and you're like, oh right, you guys are going for a specific thing. But like I said, even being out as an Asian performer, helped me find a tribe in terms of even on camera or off in the theater community or the sketch comedy community. I certainly found some allies and got to work with people and find different flavors of being Asian and being gay. But yeah, it would be the casting process of going, oh, okay, this is what you're going for. Luckily enough, sticking around for 20 years, my audition room experience changed. I like to say to my students and to actors coming up that what makes you different makes you special. Mm-hmm. Whether that is at first your race or your age or your outer envelope, the obvious features, and that gets you in the room. And then after 20 years, suddenly the room around me changed, and it was like, oh, I'm not the yellow crayon anymore. I stopped seeing the same, because I wasn't Asian enough for the Asian roles, but I would be in the room and I'd see like all these fantastic character actors that I look up to, like Graham Duffy and Chris Gauthier and Rogi Yu, and I'm going, oh, this is great. Yeah. Oh, cool. So whatever, there's the brand of yourself that's the outer envelope, the sort of obvious physical qualities, and then there's that spirit that's within, that intangible, but you go, there's something else that's standing out. And it's so much fun as an artist to get
The spirit within, though, is what I'm finding is not what's being acknowledged.
It doesn't. It's hard to.
Yeah. So when I was saying I was offended by what was keeping us all in that room was nothing to do with the spirit within. It was that, oh, you're this color, so we're going to lump you all together because you're suitable for this role. Yet the spirit within of these people couldn't have been more diverse, and most of us were not right for the role due to the fact that the spirit within was not the right fit. But the only reason we were there is because we all had the right skin tone.
It's interesting because I used to think of acting as like street hockey in Canada. So follow me here. So you're playing.
street hockey.
Yeah. I'll catch you. I'll bring you up to speed. Okay.
yeah.
So we play street hockey, and if a car was coming, we'd stop the game, call car, and let the car go through. I used to do that with my acting. I'd be Luvia, and then audition. Oop, Luvia's aside. What do they want? And I think that gets us in traps.
Yeah.
And so instead of, street hockeying it, no, if the audition comes, I'm still Luvia in these
Your
circumstances.
full human capacity of
Yes,
Luvia.
this is who I am. This is who I bring. And then, of course, you're going to get direction in the room and whatnot. But that has been a huge shift for me as a human being. Yeah. I'm in my life to practice my acting, and I'm in my acting to practice my life, and I've realized there's no difference between either. And that's how you let that, what did you call it?
Your spirit within.
Your spirit
inner
within.
brand.
Your inner brand, your spirit within shine through by not shutting down the parts of you that make you who you are, just to service a role.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll often go into it if the brief doesn't call for like no makeup or if it's not super specific, I'll go in with a full face of makeup and just like I am and kind of bring my interpretation of the role. And I think the last few things that I've booked have been that, and they've loved that, and they say bring that to the role. We want you exactly how you are. And once I started like accepting that and like, well, this character wouldn't wear makeup, but maybe they would. So just take a risk and go with it. I don't do that all the time. If it says call for it calls it as for a doctor, maybe don't go in with the full face and be, imply. But yeah, like opening up, being yourself, going in, and it just worked really well.
I'll talk to what you were talking about earlier about the debate about coming out as an actor and being a gay actor when you're starting a career. And for me, I kind of struggled with that concept because when I first came here, I was very aware of like, how can I be the most neutral so they can put whatever they need to on me to play whatever character.
Right.
And then I think I realized this, and like I said, I kind of came out twice. I did it in university, and then I, for some reason, forgot and reset when I came to Vancouver. But as soon as I came out in university, I stopped performing that sexuality. I stopped performing my straightness to try and fit in, or performing my neutral, or whatever I was trying to do, and just let myself actually be myself and interpret a character from there, as opposed to already having this layer of, I have to lower my voice a bit, and I have to watch what my hands are doing, and I have to, you know, that just complicates things.
Yeah.
And with film, I did the same thing. I came in and I was like, well, how can I make this the most? How do I go in and not really make any choices so they can tell me what choices to make? And you're like, you don't book that way. And then in the past kind of 3 to 5 years, I've been out of the closet for a decade now, and only in the past maybe 3 or 4 years have I realized the far more interesting choice, I think, in the room is to fully be yourself and bring your own
And
queerness.
that's got nothing to do with our sexuality, our diversity, our ethnicity. It's got nothing to, all actors
Definitely.
have to go through that.
Yeah, it adds this added layer of who you inherently, you know, this kind of, I guess, societal kind of pressure that I had that comes back from when I was a teenager. These kind of things when I was in high school that are learned behaviors that I'm trying to unlearn to be like, oh no, it's far more interesting to be who I am.
Yeah.
And now, I've also noticed in the past 2 or 3 years, I've gone out for queer characters, I've booked queer roles as a result of it. And it is kind of, I don't know, maybe it's a niche, maybe I'm starting to kind of put myself in a corner, but I'm much happier and much more comfortable, and I think a better auditioner when I go in fully as myself, as opposed to going in for what I think they want me to be.
Yeah.
And what is neutral if not a negation?
Completely.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, there's no
To-
neutral human being.
Right? Yeah, what is neutral?
Yeah, show me a neutral human.
You can be this specific guy from the West or a cowboy, or you could be this guy, like specific characters, but what is neutral? Neutral
Yes.
is just like not gay. Or just not something.
There's nothing interesting.
It's not actionable. It's not
Yeah.
livable.
There's
Yeah.
no conflict.
When I encounter with students sometimes, or I hear teachers, or I hear people talk about, oh, well, that guy's got a really gay voice. How do we correct it, or how do we fix it?
Yeah.
Or how do we, like, and some of the approaches like, what characters do you see you play? And I was like, oh, that's actually kind of a nice in. What characters do you see yourself play? Because it's also, in a lot of the character work that I work with my students is, who is this character's role model? Who did they look up to? Like, if I think about my voice, it's like a mix of Conan O'Brien and John Ritter. You know, because those are the guys that I like. I was like, I wanted to be them. That's how I wanted to sound. And Don Knotts in there somewhere. But it's not about correcting, and it's not about being neutral or negating. Even in the actor's work, it's about specifically going, well, who does this character look up to? What was their given circumstance?
I think of Hallmark when I think of neutral.
Yeah.
You guys, I want to book Hallmark so bad.
No way.
You guys, I know, it's my agent thinks I'm crazy, but a while ago, I remember because I used to have this idea, and this was my ego. Oh, I'm not Hallmark type. And so that was my ego. But now I'm like, screw the ego. I'm gonna get in, you guys. I'm gonna get in there, and so now I go to auditions and I curl my hair and I get excited, and I have a Hallmark dress that I wear. I don't know how we got into Hallmark, but
Pearls, you need
Which
pearls.
heroes did
I wear
Luvia-
pearl earrings, and I'm getting in.
You're in.
I'm
Get
getting
the
in.
pearls.
You know,
Which Luvia grew up in this environment to have this life?
Yes.
You know, what did she look up
Absolutely.
to? Who were her big sisters
Yes.
or
It lives
role
in me.
models?
It lives in me. Anyways.
And Nelson, you've been gay on Hallmark.
I have.
have?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I haven't had a romantic, but all my characters have
Well, nobody has
sexuality.
anything romantic on Hallmark. They don't really do that.
That's amazing. I
They
love
play
it.
cards and they have a nice time and they light candles. No. One of the things I would say about before I was. There was a time where I finally got to play a character that had sexuality. This is not in Hallmark, but I was like, oh right, how come I'm not doing that for all my characters? And through my experience in the Hallmark world, even though I haven't had a homosexual romantic love interest, some of my characters have had sexuality in them as it plays, as it serves the scene. But so yeah, I would say that some of my characters on Hallmark are gay. but it wasn't sort of explicitly.
Yay,
like,
Hallmark!
Absolutely, those guys
I
are
was going to say
pulling
earlier, I
for.
want to acknowledge the fact that
diversity.
I'm coming up in a time in this industry where I have the advantage of the fact that there are queer roles at all. A lot of what you were talking about earlier with your voice is too gay for this industry, or you need to control this, you need to change this, maybe as a holdover from an era where you just weren't going to book anything if you came in and had that voice. Now if you have that voice, there's a chance they're going to be like, hey, that would be a really interesting note for this character that's not going to take over the show and it's not going to distract from anything. We can work this in a really wonderful way. And I don't know that that's always occurred. I don't know if that's
No,
always
absolutely
been the
not.
case, right?
No.
The fact that Hallmark has queer characters, romantic or not, is fascinating.
They did a commercial recently for their greeting cards where it was it was like for all occasions, but it was this dramatic commercial about a father understanding that his son wanted to come out to him and wasn't.
That's
I
impressive.
And I
just got
was like,
goosebumps.
Do they have a greeting
That's-
card for it now? Or?
it was
Is a
something.
greeting card for coming out?
Coming outside.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I felt like it was moving in that direction. I
love it.
For all occasions.
Shoppers
Yeah.
Drug Mart, you know, they have all the categories for cards.
How
If
to give your
son is gay-
parent a card. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, listening to all of you describe, you know, being who you are, representing yourself when you're going to auditions or whatever role you're in. I'm not an actor, but I can certainly relate to many aspects of it. Is when you don't bring your true self to something, you don't see the success and you don't feel good about yourself. And on that note, I was wondering if you could all share, because the audience for this is other actors, people considering becoming actors, UBCP ACTRA members. Can you share a really horrible story or something that was really disappointing and tough because you were either out or not out, or that had an impact on you that helped you, you know, grow, but maybe at the time you didn't feel like that was going to.
I think in the 90s, film sets were actually quite a homophobic place. And I remember sitting at lunch on set and sitting with the director and a couple of the ADs, because I knew them also on a little bit of a personal level, so we were just chatting. And this director said, I can't even believe he said this, theater in Canada is run by faggots. And nobody challenged him, not even me. And he said it more than once. He was ranting about the problem with Canadian theater. And he said, the trouble is it's because it's run by faggots. And I did ask him, well, what do you mean by that? And his thing was the aesthetic of it is, it's a very effeminate, not ballsy, no grit, you know, all the negative connotations of what that word to him meant. And I just shut right down for the rest of the day. I didn't enjoy being there. I didn't want to be there. And I just thought, where do I fit? Where am I going to fit? Is this my life? And here I'm thinking, oh, I'm doing great. I get to live my dream. I'm on this show. How many people would kill for this? And I was just going, ugh.
I think for me, like in high school, especially, I was bullied quite a bit because even in high school, like 15 years ago, I was wearing makeup to school and just did whatever I wanted to do. I had a mother that if I wore makeup, she'd be like, okay, like she didn't care. So for me, that was my,
I can't even imagine that life.
Really?
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
no, it was,
lucky
and
you.
so being bullied, I think I became numb to it because I was blocking it out. So when it came to auditions, or if I did hear anything on set or at auditions, I think I subconsciously didn't hear it. I didn't hear it at all. So yeah, for me, it's just always been this, and I just do me. Yeah.
It can be a difficult negotiation if you're also like a day player on something. You come in and you're like, I'm just a visitor here, not realizing that it's a toxic work environment potentially. So yeah, it's tough. One of the things that gets me through in terms of maybe not to that degree so often, because luckily for me, I haven't had to deal with that as much. But when I don't get cast for things, I say to myself, well, that's every production has its own culture, and this culture includes me or it doesn't, and that's fine. But even I've noticed the stuff that I've worked on, every production has its own somewhat culture, and I go, oh, okay, there's some rough edges in this one, or I come into something, I'm like, oh, this is my world, this is my jam, or oh, this elevates my game. But I do find that there's different. Every production has its own culture, and it's a tough negotiation to go, where do I fit in here, and what are my rights, what are how am I meant to feel in this
And I think it starts from number one down. Number one being either the number one on the call sheet or the producer, executive producer. Whatever the level of health or lack of at the top is all going to filter down.
What comes up for me as a challenge as a woman in this industry, and then on top of that a queer woman, is being sexualized. Oh, God, I've had to navigate this, you guys. See, I feel emotional. So I carry shame because if a producer or a director is attracted to me, I get more work with them. So what do I do? You know, like, and yet I carry a shame because I'm a feminist. So I want to like, I'm just gonna hold your hand. I want to use my voice in that moment, and I want to protect other women that are gonna be sexualized or talked to in a way. And so I'm like, come on, Luvia, say something. And I guess what I need to do is I need to find an ally on set or something, you know. And so that's been challenging.
That's interesting because
Thanks.
can I be a devil's advocate?
please,
and
go.
forgive me for being, if I come off insensitive.
Oh, no, I just had to move some emotion through. I'm an actor.
And this is just me playing devil's advocate.
go.
Sometimes in the gay community, we are so open and comfortable with sexualizing each other. That, you know, I was on a film which was full of drag queens and gay men,
Yes.
and it was a great fun time.
Yeah.
But oh my God, the language and the vocabulary and the cutting wit and the sexualization of each other was very, very open. Now I was thinking about that, going, you could never say some of this stuff if it was a straight set. The sexualization towards each other, the things they said. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, my experiences, and it's very specific experiences, and it's so challenging because I'm like, I respect this person, I would consider them a friend, I reach out to them, I would email them questions, they're supportive of my career, and then on the equal, they've openly told me on set that I have a nice ass, that they like the way the gun looks when I tuck it into the back of my pants. And I, you know, gosh, I mean, see, it's so funny. Right now I'm thinking, oh, if they see this, they're gonna feel bad.
Yeah.
And I'm worried about them. What the fuck is wrong with me? And so I'm navigating this right now in my life, and I'm trying to find my voice. And you know what's helping? The voices of other men and women. The Me Too movement, it's really helping because I feel like there's a collective voice now. I don't know if I would have ever said this a few years ago. I don't think I would have. But now I feel stronger and empowered because it's a collective voice. And I don't have to go into a toxic work environment. Who made that rule? That the film industry has to be a toxic environment? No, no more. It doesn't have to be. Am I saying that I'm going to use my voice the next time someone sexualizes me or tells me how sexy I am or how hot my wife is? I don't know. I don't know if I'll be able to, but maybe I'll find an ally on set and just start there. Like, do you guys have any advice?
Well, it's a different set of rules for women than men, I think.
It absolutely is.
Especially for gay men and gay women.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what my observation is. Gay men have so many different rules than what gay women would permit.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah?
As far as like how kind of like open they are and able to talk about certain topics and stuff. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know. I mean, I like listening to you. It's not to like diminish any adversity I may have faced, but I really do. I have been lucky. I'm lucky to be in this industry as a white cis man. That gives me this, you know, I think we were talking about this earlier. I'm on the cusp of being on this panel, right? Like right now, I have so many advantages that it's hard for me to look back and be like, that time they told me to be a little gayer. I'm like, yeah, that sucks. Yeah. It does suck. And I don't know if I'm, again, I don't mean to diminish that. That's a shitty thing. Yeah. You know, there's been times in a room where someone, actually speaking of Hallmark earlier, there have been some breakdowns where I'm like, they won't say the character's gay, but they'll come up with some roundabout way of, you know, literally once said light in the loafers and a little too precious, I think was the, and then you get in and then at a certain point and then they're trying to come up with a way to say like, dial it up the gayness. But I don't know. I don't know. It's hard for me to not make light of that, and maybe I shouldn't be. But for me, it is. I think I just let it roll off. When it
I know, because
happens.
like I'm just thinking, oh, I like the way your ass looks in those pants, or the gun. And if a gay man said that to a gay man, everyone would be laughing, and oh, that's so
Completely.
fun and all positive. It's a whole other context.
It's a power
Yeah.
dynamic.
It is a power dynamic. I feel like my power is being stripped away from me, and I don't know how to navigate it. And you know, being a lesbian, I was afraid to be attractive to men, and afraid to not be attractive to men. Because if I'm not attractive to men, what is my currency as a woman in this industry? If I am attractive to men, how do I navigate that?
Yeah.
So I turned into the buddy. I could drink beers with the guys, and yeah, that chick's got a nice rack on her, or whatever you know, and the words coming out of my mouth are gross, but I want to fit in so bad, and I'm so afraid, and I don't want to fucking do that anymore.
I totally agree. Like, for me, the equivalent of that was I became neutral.
Right.
So I stripped away Veena so that none of that was there, and then I started playing doctors. Right? Who have no emotional life, you know, you're just this exposition of medical jargon.
And the other thing is still objectification too.
Yeah.
So it's like it's not the.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, any woman in the industry, objectification, you know, versus sexual availability is really important. But so many of us, including me, came up during a generation where that was dangerous, too dangerous to expose.
How would you treat that situation, say, if you're at a bar, like your day-to-day life? Like
Right.
if someone says something to you about your ass?
Yeah, that's a great, I think, you know what that makes me think of is, again, there is no life challenge. That's not an acting challenge. There's no acting challenge. That's not a life challenge. So I'm still separating it.
Right.
And
I
I
mean,
can't.
you
I
can't.
have to
Yeah.
bridge who is Luvia at a bar
Yep.
when she gets objectified.
Yeah.
And
I think the passion is that you want to succeed so much that you're
Yes.
willing to do or take whatever.
Yes.
But yeah, that has to stop,
That-
right?
yes, it
Otherwise it
does.
won't change.
So in this last year and a half, with you know, Me Too, lots of exposure, lots of people sharing their stories, lots of women, men as well, the culture kind of being unraveled very publicly. Is there a shift that's starting to happen?
Yeah. I
What
think
does it
we-
look like?
I think we just talked about it
Well,
here.
this, I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah, being able to have these discussions and being able to tell stories like that.
Yeah.
But again, for someone like me, it's just even just like being a witness to this and hearing about the kind of adversity that people face.
I haven't gone through too much of it, but being on the last show that I worked on, I found that everyone was over considerate and like, may I touch you? May I do this? I'm like, go for it, feel me up, like go, like do what you need to do, like to put your mic on me, like. So I could really sense that everybody was really trying to make a change. Me personally, I'm not really like affected by it so much. Like I don't really mind. I'm pretty affectionate myself and touchy-feely with my friends, and they're okay with it for the most part. But
I find I don't walk onto a set with any protection anymore. I used to have a layer of protection that was just an automatic thing, like putting on my coat when I'd head to set. And it was about me having to hide or having to laugh at jokes that I didn't feel were appropriate. All this protection bullshit so that I would be hireable, the people pleaser. And now I don't walk onto sets feeling I have to put on any of that protection because I know it's not going to come up. I don't need to protect myself because there's nothing to protect myself from.
Those people are still going to exist too, right? There's still going to be insensitive things said on set. There's going to be things that are done that shouldn't be done. But I think what this movement has done is allowed people to feel like they have a voice in it and feel like they have allies in it. So you're able to if and when something happens, feel confident to be able to say no or walk away from a job or feel empowered to, if you're uncomfortable, say, no, this is who I am and I have people supporting me now, and have that not be the end of your career or the end of the world.
There used to be this culture of if you were in the movies, you could be whatever kind of asshole you wanted to be because you were in this amazing profession that, you know, it was so cool. And thankfully, that is over. There's so much content being created.
Yeah.
And most of the world is creating their own content, whether it be their own little YouTube video
Yeah.
or a selfie is content. So it's not this big fancy, oh my God, that's so cool thing anymore, where you could get away with whatever you wanted because you were in this cool profession.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm so glad to see it's become a bit more of a level playing field for everybody.
Social media has changed that too.
Yeah.
Someone's an asshole to you, everyone can know that day.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Well, when a YouTube influencer has more cachet than a movie star, that's
Yes.
just interesting.
Hear, hear. What about, we touched on this a little bit earlier. What is the perspective of, that plum role did not go to an LGBTQ identifying person if the character identifies in one of those?
I don't know, I guess to me, having a gay actor play a gay role just informs the character a bit more. It's coming from someone who has their own story and who's had to go through that and has a unique perspective on that, and that can only further color a character and color the story. Going with a straight actor who can very effectively play a queer role, especially a role that may not even be that overtly queer, like, I don't know, how can I be annoyed by that
a
when I'm
tough
playing
one,
straight
'cause-
characters and
Yeah, I played mostly straight people,
Right.
right? So does that mean that that's wrong? But I could never feel qualified to understand how to take on the psychological navigation of playing a trans character. I would very happily give that over
Yeah.
to somebody. So there's certain things that you do need to have an understanding of as an actor, but then maybe there's other things you don't.
You know how we were talking about, like, we don't have to feel comfortable, but these are the conversations we need to be having. I have to say, I feel very uncomfortable talking about this, so I just want to say that outright, because I don't feel qualified, but I'm gonna stick my neck out anyways. And to take something from Brené Brown, if you're not in the ring, if you're gonna criticize from the nosebleed seats, I'm not interested in your opinion. So if you have an opinion, get in the ring, do something about it.
Right.
Okay, number one. Number two, I feel that I'm not a murderer, and I'm not comparing the two,
Yeah.
but the psychoanalytic understanding, but I'm a human being. I've been hurt, I've been rejected, I have felt vulnerable, I felt broken. If that is something that you feel helps elevate and support your story, then cast me in the part. If I don't bring what supports the story, then I'm not the actor for you. And it's not that black and white. It's not that
Yeah.
simple. However, that's the conversation I'm interested in unpacking.
Yeah.
There's a movement right now in the cartoon and voiceover world that if your character on screen is of whatever ethnicity, then the actor portraying them, even though we don't see those actors, should also be that. And that's an
Right.
interesting, it's opening the doors to a lot of people now to get work in that department that never ever would have gotten in.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily the best actors for those roles. So it's a tough one. I always, of course, would want to rather be cast on the merit of my skill as an actor,
Right.
not any other reason, no other reason.
I think it's like looking from the trans person's perspective as well, as are they auditioning for cis male or cis female roles? And they're probably not. They're not probably so it's like almost let them have their roles, let them tell
Yeah.
their stories,
Yeah.
because it's kind of unfair. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, they don't get seen for anything except for trans roles, and why do we get to have their roles
Yeah,
if they can't have ours?
I hear that.
I
And
think
get them in
that's
the writing
just, I'm
room.
trying to shift
Yes.
in my perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
And me as an actor, I don't feel comfortable playing a trans role.
How about yes to everything, and let's see where the cards
Exactly.
fall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's not limit ourselves.
Well, then
Let's-
that's what we're working towards,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Let's just open the doors, and best idea wins, best story wins.
100%.
And it's a
Most
transition
represented.
time.
Yeah,
So
it is.
there's
Exactly.
definitely
We're figuring it
lesser
out.
We're on the
actors
way.
lesser actors are getting opportunities that maybe they're not qualified yet for, but who cares? Let them try.
And how do you get qualified?
Yeah.
Experience,
Exactly.
opportunity.
Exactly.
But right now, yeah, the push is for authenticity. People want authentic depictions. And that
Right.
has to do with a lack of representation. If this marginalized community can be brought up to the point of recognition that the privileged
Right.
have, then the audience and even the artists working within will go, okay, well, we've seen this. Well, what else can we do?
Yeah.
And the artists can work together to continue on that front. But it's really the form and pressure of the time.
Yeah,
context
we're
of-
only different
where
because
we are.
society tells us we're different.
Right.
So if they stop doing that, then we can all be just human, right?
Yes.
Well, and
Which
look
is
how,
the goal.
Look
Yeah.
how far it's come for all of us, right? I never used to see myself reflected back to me on television, unless I watched an Indian movie.
Right.
Sure.
Now I don't even look twice. It's like, of course.
Yeah.
So look how far things have come. So we're still, we got a long way to go, but it's come a long way.
You were talking about Will and Grace earlier, and I have so much love and affection for that show because it's what helped me and my mom come together about me being gay. She's like, oh, Will and Grace. So when she would tell family members that I was a lesbian, she'd be like, it's just like Will and Grace. Livy's just like Will and Grace.
And I think it served to not distance me from my dad, but I think my parents' perspective, like I was saying earlier, in rural Alberta, Lethbridge it's a city, but like their perspective on gay culture was that. And so for me to be Jack was terrifying to them.
Right.
And it meant that when I came out, how I dressed was going to change, who I spent time with was going to change,
Right.
how I acted, how I danced, how, like all of this was going to change.
Right.
Because from their perspective, that's the gay person they knew.
That's right. My mom, when I came out, she asked me, she goes, well, you're not gay. You shaved your legs.
Right.
And then she said, well, are you attracted to K.D. Lang? I was like, no. She goes, well, then you can't be gay.
So we need more nuanced
Yeah.
stories
Yeah.
so that
So it's normalized.
Yes,
But
exactly.
I feel like that's an entry point, right?
It's an entry
it's
point.
accessible to people,
Yeah.
even if the character's being laughed at sometimes.
Right.
It's an entry point. It's
Yeah.
it's entering into rural Alberta homes. It's giving them a perspective to say like, hey, this person isn't evil. They're well intentioned. They have a variety of emotions. They have friends. They're people. So then it gets an entry point. Same with queer as folk. And now we're at a point where we're able to see. I'm lucky enough to be on a show right now playing a pretty conservative gay man in a very kind of white picket fence, monogamous relationship who's, he's a little judgy of this polyamorous relationship. Like this person exists and it's who I would have wanted to see on TV because it's a lot closer to who I am. It's who I'd want my parents to see. So the more the better. The more queer roles, the better. And I think
Yeah.
the more queer
Normalize it.
representation from queer actors, I think the better too.
And non-stereotyped versions
Yes.
of
Absolutely.
that. Like, let's
Yeah.
keep opening up what that looks like.
Yeah.
And again, the onus is on people to show up,
Yeah.
to not hide, to not.
Yeah.
But that takes courage. But that's not just the artists. That's also the people who watch, the people who are in their lives must come out and engage. I like to think that Gen Z is doing it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in touch with the various generations, and I'm seeing that the 20-year-olds are quite extra. If I can take on some of the language.
I just
which is
learned
nice.
that
They're
word yesterday.
Yeah, they're
it's
showing
a
up.
millennial word, right?
I think there's a lot of challenges with social media for sure.
They're open to
and-
so much more now.
and the internet. But one of the bonuses that we get is people showing up and allowing themselves to be different, to show
Yeah.
up and strut their stuff. And I think that's going to inform the future
And
of our industry.
have the conversation. Not
Yeah.
be afraid to have the fight, have the discussion, change perspectives. Because if you don't do that, we're never going to advance forward. Those roles are never going to get written. We'll stay with the stereotypes we have because they're safe.
I was scared to come here today.
Me too.
Oh, God, what if I say the wrong thing?
I had the
Right.
moment. I was talking about coming out 2 or 3 times now, and I still even having the thought 5 years ago of do I tell my agent I have a boyfriend? And I was like, I'm out. I'm an out man. I talk about my boyfriend all the time, to everybody. And when I got the email to come here, I had the moment of oh, but then the casting directors are going to see this. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, they know.
Yeah.
By now they know. But yeah, it's kind of this ingrained
I was so pleased that we had this because most of the panels I get asked to speak on are about, well, what's it like to be a non-white actor? And I'm like,
Right.
oh my God, are we still having panels on
Right.
that? I don't want to be a part of that panel anymore. I've done 20 years of that. Enough.
Luvia, you mentioned talking about allies and the importance of finding allies and finding your ally on set or in the cast, the crew. What does that mean to you? Or what makes an effective ally?
An effective ally accepts me for who I am and doesn't try to change me, doesn't try to fix me.
I've been pretty lucky on set. Everyone's super supportive. And like I said, with the last two jobs that I got going in to the audition room like this, they wanted me exactly how I was. So I was always treated with lots of respect, and I thought everyone on set was amazing, and I had just had a great experience.
Yeah, and we can tell. Energetically, we can feel when something doesn't feel right. We might not understand it or know what to do about it to fix it, but we can sense, hey, wait a minute, my spidey senses are saying something's not exactly right here. And I think what would be nice for me is if you see me on set and your spidey senses are going off and like, I wonder if Luvia's okay. Pull me aside.
Yeah.
Are you okay? I saw what happened there. Is everything cool?
Which is tough on a set because you're entering potentially into an environment, especially when you're getting started, full of strangers, right? You're lucky to be on a show where you know a lot of cast members or crew and you see some familiar faces, but if you're starting, finding your allies can be a challenge. But like we were saying earlier, I think we're entering into a time, and it's evolving, where it's going to be the standard, I think, and I hope that everyone is an ally to some extent, right?
Yeah.
You're surrounded by people that you don't need to seek out your person that you're like, oh, you know what's up.
Right.
Everybody is starting to learn what's up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And doesn't everyone want to be an ally? Like, hands up, does anybody want to be the asshole? I don't think so. Even the assholes don't want to be the assholes.
Right.
We're all learning still, I guess, and like being asked questions is like great. I love when people come to me and ask questions about who I am or how I identify, and I can just educate them, especially on set. People shouldn't be afraid to ask questions. I think they're kind of like freaking out. They don't want to say the wrong thing, but like I encourage that.
I
so
totally
much.
agree with that. I encourage ask questions. People find it. I've had the experience where, because I've played a lot of Indians, a lot of the crew or non-Indian cast might want to get clarification on something to do with our culture, and they're afraid to ask questions. They think that they may offend me. What does it mean when you do this, or why do you guys do that? And they're terrified. But no, I love it that you're asking questions.
Yeah.
I've had to learn that. I teach improv at CapU, and so I remember the first time I came across this, could I have a couple of volunteers? We're going to improvise a first date scene. And clearly one of the students was not identifying in one direction or another. So I had to ask the student, in this scene, how do you want to be identified? And that's the first time as a teacher I've ever come across that. It was a big learning experience.
Yeah.
But I think the student was appreciative that they at least got to be asked and choose.
I would prefer you to ask than assume.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, this has raised for me the question asking thing. Have any of you ever felt on set that you become a bit of a commodity because of your sexuality or race or something like that? I found being sometimes the only queer person on set being asked questions, it kind of becomes novel. It becomes more attractive for someone to want to feel like they're really open to asking you questions, so you become a bit of a commodity. Has anyone ever felt that? Like,
I don't even know if this is of interest because it predates my acting world, but I remember my boss asking me, like, how do women have safe sex?
Right.
Like, what is that? And like, I could tell that he was kind of getting turned on by it, and like it just, and I was so much younger than him, and I was, God, all these power things that have happened in my, and now I want to interject in that conversation and look at him and go, this is an inappropriate conversation. If you are so interested in how lesbians have safe sex, go do your research, but you're not going to do your research with this 18-year-old girl.
Right.
Thanks, bye.
It has so
that
much
felt
to
good.
do with intention, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I like to think that there's no such thing as a bad question, but you got to ask yourself what's underneath it. Because sometimes it's people just trying to find common ground, or it's the most obvious thing that they want to talk about because they're like, "You're gay. Let's talk about gay things." Then.
yeah, right. Yeah.
So gay,
So
huh?
gay, huh?
Yeah. And, none of us walked into this space going, I'm gay, so I'm here for you to ask,
Yes.
you woke up, you come, you're just a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like everyone else.
One of my favorite, the most deft handling of questions like this I saw was recently on YouTube. It was Tom Hardy, and some reporter was going to ask him about his sexuality in an interview he had from the past. And he repeated the question. He's like, you want to ask me about my sexuality? Why?
Yeah.
And he just hung on that. Like, he wanted to know the guy's intention, and the guy fumbled.
Yeah.
And it was just such a lovely,
And then
very
he's just
simple, what is your
Actually,
intention?
that's beautiful, because maybe the follow-up is, my son. Da, 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 and I want to learn how to, maybe it's Ernest. So that's beautiful because that's a bridge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
What's the source of that?
Can generally get people's vibes though. I think when asking questions, you can kind of sense if they're going to be comfortable with the question or not. Like people come up to me thinking that I'm super confident because I dress the way I do. I'm totally up for answering questions, but I'm not always confident. I'm still figuring out who I am. I get confused on the labels. Like I'm still figuring it all out. So yeah, it's kind of gray area for me.
Yeah.
So this is all, we'll go back to authenticity, right? Nelson, you've mentioned it a few times, how important it is when you're playing a character. It always comes back to the authenticity of how the character is written, what the actor is bringing to the character. But where in the value chain does the responsibility lie before it gets to the casting? Or does it happen in the casting?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I mean, I would say that there's a push towards authenticity now, specifically because as a global village, we're seeing that there are people who are marginalized, not represented. Representation does matter. But whose responsibility is it? That's a really good question. I mean, some would say it's throughout the chain. There is a power dynamic. The people that create the content, the people that write it, and the people who they're going to employ. It's tough. It would. I mean, it's on an individual basis.
And I think a good casting director isn't someone who just takes directives from producers. A good casting director is someone who's willing to educate and expand their producers and offer something a little outside the box. The good ones do that. And I've seen that happen, and it's amazing. It's fantastic.
And in those situations, I would assume that the producers would be grateful.
Yeah.
Thank you, you've enriched our story.
Yeah.
You've deepened the well.
Any final thoughts or words of advice or any further, you've all been very open and very caring in your responses and your discussion here, and I think that is amazing. But I want to give you the opportunity, if there's anything that we haven't discussed or any final thoughts that can help this audience that might be watching this.
My advice, I guess, would be that I wish someone had maybe told me when I first moved here a decade ago, would be to not underestimate the power of your own experience and your own, being yourself, like we were talking about earlier. Don't be intimidated by the things that make you unique, because those are the things that you'll find your niche that way. Yeah. You'll kind of find the pocket where you best exist, and you'll just be happiest. It's just, I guess I shouldn't speak for other people. For me, I found I was much happier once I realized I could be myself in this industry, fully and truly. And then I found more success that way.
And if anyone's watching this and heard all of our stories and had but my situation is different, that's the very thing that's going to make your uniqueness more special and castable. Yeah. And that's the story we want, your but. That's the story, that's the goal.
Yeah, if you're able to really be your authentic self and speak your truth, I think it does a lot of good. Yeah.
Yeah, took my answer. But I would also add to that to last as an actor, to survive, you really have to get in touch with your artist's mission statement. Why am I doing this? You can't be defined by your work, because the work comes and the work goes. And a lot of it has to do with the social political pressure of the time. When I was growing up, the Asian actors were all Japanese. It was like Shogun and Samurai Warriors. And then fast forward to 2000, Memoirs of a Geisha, there wasn't a Japanese geisha. They were all Chinese. And that these social political things can move and change. But you've got to be in it because of a sense of self-discovery, because of that sense of being lost in the howling wilderness and getting in touch with humanity.
Yeah, hopefully any adversity you face just it cracks you open and drives you, like we've talked about. I'm so grateful for my rejection letter to Studio 58. You too?
Oh yeah.
When I got it in the mail, I was like, I'll show them, in that exact voice. And I feel like I have, but really it wasn't them. Them was me. I'll prove to myself that I'm worthy. I'll prove to myself that I can do this thing. And that's really the only opinion that matters, is your own.
Yep.
So if you can look at yourself in the mirror after Tom has stepped over a boundary, then good for you. And if you can't, then ask for help and allies like we did today.
Have a conversation, be happy with yourself. I think
Yes.
it's really important. Be authentic. If you're struggling with your authenticity and you're trying to figure out who you are, that's okay as well. Like, it's gonna come. But don't be afraid to figure it out. Step out of your comfort zone. See what works for you. And then when it does work for you, take it and run.
And if figuring it out means getting professional help, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
a
nothing wrong
big
with that.
advocate of, you don't have to do this alone.
Excellent, thank you. I think that's a wrap, right? As you like to say in this business.